Good afternoon, everyone. I am Shafak Erdem, Managing Partner at Erdem Attorneys at Law, and it's really a pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, A World Between Orders, the New Phase of Global Geo-Economics. We find ourselves at a critical crisis in history where the world's economic and geopolitical landscapes are shifting faster than ever before. With that in mind, I'm delighted to be here with all of you today to explore these complex dynamics alongside two incredible thought leaders. I'm joined by Nicolas Michelon, who is the founder and CEO of Asia Intelligence Advisory, who will be sharing his expertise in global economic trends and geopolitical shifts, especially within Asia and beyond. We are also fortunate to have Hakan Doğu, who is the chairman of Alagan Mobility Solutions, a visionary leader in mobility and technology industries with valuable insights on how these industries are navigating the changing global landscape. Today, we are here to discuss one of the most significant challenges of our time, the shifting balance of global economic power. As new players emerge and regional alliances are formed, understanding this change is more crucial than ever for businesses, decision makers, and policymakers alike. Over the course of this webinar, we will explore how emerging economies are redefining the global economic order and what this means for established powers, the impact of geopolitical tensions and the trade wars on global markets, particularly focusing on relationships between the US, Turkey, and Israel, the influence of technology and innovation on shaping the future, especially in sectors like mobility, where disruption is both a challenge and an opportunity. And most importantly, we will discuss the strategies businesses and the leaders need to navigate these uncertainties and seize the opportunities ahead. This is not just a conversation about today's economic landscape, it's about preparing for what's next. So our goal is to provide you with actionable insights that you can use to better understand the future and position yourself for success in this ever-evolving world. I'm confident that this discussion will leave you with valuable takeaways and a fresh perspective on the global economy. So thank you for joining us. I look forward to engaging, thought-provoking conversation ahead. Nicolas, I would like to start with you. And given your deep expertise in global economic trends and your work with Asia Intelligence Advisory, one of the biggest questions on everyone's mind is how emerging economies are reshaping the geo-economic order. With countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America gaining more economic power, how do you see this transformation playing out in the coming years? And more importantly, what strategies should established powers such as US and Europe adapt to maintain their influences in this new reality?
Thank you, Shafak. Thanks for this introduction. And I'm quite happy, and I have to say, I have to thank the entire team at the Erdem Attorneys, because I think this panel is has a very nice balance. You, Shafak, with the legal background and the expertise on export controls and sanctions, Hakan bringing his expertise, long expertise in the industry, and in the automobile industry in particular, and me, who started as an economist, who's been looking at financial markets, the financial services industry, and geopolitics in general. To answer your first question, I think it's quite important for everybody to remember that we are in a very bipolar world right now. I would not be characterizing the current environment as a multipolar world just yet. It's still very much a bipolar world. I would advise everybody to read the books by Professor John Mearsheimer from the University of Chicago, who brilliantly described how the new world order is reshaping alongside two main regional hegemonic powers. There are only two, the United States and China. They're the only ones, nobody else. And a whole series and different groups of what we sometimes call in geopolitics middle powers. So countries, economies, nations big enough to aspire to strategic autonomy, to aspire to pursuing their own way, but not mighty enough to be an actual hegemon. the fact that we have this multiplication now of regional powers, what we sometimes call the global south, even if the definition of global south is still very vague. And I mean, if you ask 10 experts, you will have 10 different definitions of what the global south is. I think it has a great advantage in the way that it reminds the two hegemonic powers, the United States and China, that a lot of countries out there are seeking to be non-aligned, which is an interesting reminder, kind of recall of what we had at the height of the Cold War between the US and the USSR, with the movement of the non-aligned countries led by India and Indonesia, for example. So we have a little bit of that going on. The problem is that the difference this time around between this bipolar world, US versus China, and the previous bipolar world, US versus the USSR, is that we have two hegemonic powers which are pretty much on par in terms of economic power. Back in the in the Cold War, the USSR was a military giant, an ideological giant, but an economic dwarf. This is not the case with China now. Now China, we have a bona fide giant in absolutely every single aspect of power that you can imagine: demographic, economic, diplomatic, cultural, technological, military, etc., which the USSR was not in many aspects. So the question for the global south and the developing economies is really how can they position themselves in this bipolar confrontation. It will be much more difficult to pick a side. And the other aspect of this confrontation is that the two hegemonic powers are forcing the rest of the globe to pick a side. They have to choose a side. We are seeing it. We're probably going to discuss it later through technology. Technology companies have to pick a side now. If you're doing business in one side, you won't be able to do business on the other side, and vice versa. So countries have to take a side. And this is where it's getting tricky for corporations, because in many aspects, there is an incentive, there is a dynamic that is forcing some of those corporates to duplicate their business, sometimes to split up some of their own operations to make sure that they can continue doing business. So I think in this sense, we have a little bit of a reminder of the old world, but we are with very new aspects which will make this confrontation much more violent and much more difficult to navigate for companies.
Mm-hmm. Akame, do you have any remarks on this? You are muted.
You're muted, Hakan.
Yes, I fully agree with Nicolas with all his comment. And of course, the motive he's here is a very interesting. I mean, why US and the China should enter the rivalry instead working together, develop much more peaceful world. So the reason behind is completely based on the supremacy of the US power, which is its currency. And even its currency is weaponized in the last 4 or 5 years. Usage of the US currency, dollar, reduced to 55%. So in this respect, United States and consequently the West benefited a lot from the deflationist impact of the last 30 years by importing from China. And apparently, boom, okay, so now they are getting too much dangerous. So then what we should do now? So now we should disengage and we should develop our own policy. So in fact, neocon policies push to neoliberal policies all over the world. Neocon policies are simple equation, which means US budget deficit minus military power equal to 0, which means as long as they keep the US military power high, US dollar can be used as a reserve money, which is just a printing cost to buy something from China. But this has changed quite a lot recently. So the world is no more single polarity. There's a multipolar. That's why US dollar utilization reduced to 55%. So this is a bad signal for the US. That's why I'm expecting that this competition is going to be harsh, as we see polarization in every aspect on the business side, and the business are always a victim of this. So what we see that US is always surviving by creating demons all around the world. So they have the demons of Iran, Soviet Union, China, etc. So I mean, this industry and this country is completely politics fed by the demonization of the countries. So based on this, so we enter completely different world, and this new chapter of the history, what is clear that the technological evolution is so fast. So as technological evolution is so fast, which means in the last 30 years, equivalent to the entire development index of the entire humanity. What does it mean? Any kind of economical data cannot be used in the past to predict the future. This is the first one. Second, the classical lesson we learned that history repeats itself. This is also broken because we see some countries in a superpower and a high superiority of the technology, and then technology is also weaponized. So so that creates a much more complexity that history may not repeat itself, because if the evolution will continue like this, we will see that the one side will be in the Stone Age and the other side will be in the let's say space age, like the film on the Star Trek that maybe you remember. So in the Star Trek, crew are not allowed to touch for the underdeveloped nation. So we are in a very strange world, and then this technological rivalry is really getting me worried. In fact, when I look at the AI, for example, in the AI side, I mean, is this AI and is this all money created just to create the stupid, silly images? And then what we recently discovered, some of them as a big copyright, let's say, claim from the third parties, or another purpose. So now we know that technology can be used in the both in the good hand and then bad in the other hand. Even the, let's say, humanity, when they discover to use the fire, so it is used to cook the meat that will increase the life expectancy of the humanity, while they put on the head of the bow and then throw it to the enemy and then to kill them. Now they make it even the atomic bomb by using the firepower. So that's why this very strong developments and then in the technology doesn't allow to the academic and all politic elites of the world to digest this and then propose better world. So as this is growing very fast, and that this digestion is not happening, and all our social balance, political balance are completely, let's say, corrupting. So if you look at from my businesses, as I'm automotive expert, so from my businesses, I mean, we are in the automotive. We are seeing this, that this electrical car invasion is coming from China, but regulator never seen this. That's so bizarre. And then they put a target, 2035, zero combustion engine. So we told them, no way, we cannot do that. And then they insist, etc. So this is showing that the political elites are not at the level of the interpreting of this very strong developments. And then this is normal. They are the, let's say, elected people. So this means people who are voting them, they are not also understanding what's happening. So now we are in a world that even the democracy is under the threat because of the paralyzation of the vast majority through the different channel. And as a consequences, this will create a very big black hole that may some Darth Vader may arise from the dark hole, which may bring the, let's say, dark times to the planet Earth. So that's why I think there is a big responsibility of academic institution or intellectual, like the platform that we have today, is to express their idea and then to see how we can balance this rising big power in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Hakan, and thank you both. Actually, that leads me to another critical issue, the trade wars and the protectionist policies. And we have seen how these tensions can destabilize global markets. And I know your work has focused on navigating these turbulent waters, Nicola. In your view, what impact will ongoing trade wars have on global economic stability, and what strategies should businesses, especially those caught in the middle, employ to mitigate the risk?
I think to answer this question, I need to continue a little bit on the previous question and rebound on some of the things that Hakan Bey just said, and with which I completely agree. I completely agree that we are entering uncharted territory in the sense that there's not many periods in human history, recent or older, that can teach us a lot about what we are going through right now. A large part of it has to do with the phenomenal progress in technology, which changes many of the paradigms that countries are operating under and that even corporates are operating under. That being said, I would like to invite our listeners not to be completely impressed by just the technological aspect of it. I believe that we are in a time that is certainly shaped by technology, but that still functions under a very old paradigm. And that old paradigm is the one that we saw at play until the end of the 19th century. I'm going to use the words of German Chancellor Bismarck for this. Bismarck famously said, "Might is right." If I have the balance of power in my favor, military, diplomatically, economically, demographically speaking, then that can justify a rightful action, that can make my action righteous. Why am I saying that we are in a times in the 21st century where we have might is right, very 19th century style, on which you start piling up technological elements, is that we are, and that's connected directly with your second question, we are in a world marked by revisionism. All nations are becoming revisionist. They're starting to question international law, the rule of law. We see that some countries, for example, China, saying basically the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas, that was written at the time when China didn't have the balance of power in its favor. We do not recognize that it's valid for today's sovereignty issues. We have a lot of countries and non-state actors being revisionist on historical topics, on topics of sovereignty, sometimes over territory. So we are in a time where whatever was represented by the likes of the United Nations, the likes of the World Trade Organization, whatever those guys are saying, whatever came out of those multilateral bodies is not being adhered to by more and more actors. More and more actors saying, I'm sorry, but I do not feel constrained by this. That leads us to trade wars, this multiplication of trade wars. Some of our listeners may remember that when Donald Trump was first in office, he tweeted famously, trade wars are good and they're easy to win. I'm not saying I agree with that tweet, but I think it captures the mentality nowadays. Nations, governments are not afraid of starting trade wars. They're not afraid of joining trade wars because everybody seems to believe, first of all, that the WTO platform is becoming obsolete. And number two, in any trade war, I may not win it, but I may be able to gain something out of it. I may be able to impose some of my will to some of my partners. So we have this multiplication of trade wars. And on top of that, we have a multiplication of trade agreements, something that we call plurilateralism. So the old multilateral system represented by the World Trade Organization, where everybody was joining in one body, one big giant universal tribunal to try and solve trade issues, is being replaced by a multiplicity of smaller agreements, usually regional agreements, which has another advantage because it allows the hegemonic powers to crush their partners under their weight. When the US imposes a re-signing with Mexico and Canada of the NAFTA agreement, which is now called USMCA, it enables the US to crush Canada and Mexico under the weight of their own economy. When China dominates RCEP in Asia, it enables China to crush their trade partners in Asia under the weight of its own economy. So we have this multiplication because we have this very revisionist view of what is a global rule-based order. And I think this is the number one aspect of doing business nowadays, which forces companies to try and go, hopping from regional bloc to regional bloc.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Nicola. Now I want to move to Hakan Bey. And Hakan Bey, your leadership at Allegan Mobility Solutions gives you a front row seat to the technological disruptions which are rapidly changing industries worldwide. And AI, automation, and digital transformation are on everyone's radar, and they are poised to significantly alter the geo-economic landscape. From your perspective, how do you see these technological advancements influencing global economics, particularly in sectors like mobility and beyond? And what steps should industries be taking now to best prepare for this inevitable shift?
So it is a very popular question of the nowadays, and everybody is raising. Nobody knows the answer because there are many answers. We are looking at very uncertain future. But what we see in the certain future, which is in the mobility will be electrified, even if now is a bit decline. My engineering sense tells me that which is much more makes sense. Second will be totally connected, and the third one is a totally autonomous. So this is, let's say, three global technological trends. Then we talk when we enter the discussion about the cities. So we know that the population on the big cities will continue to increase. And this is nonsense, but this is the reality. So we will see at China city size 25, 30 million cities, even in the rest of the world. That makes the mobility is impossible in the current understanding. So when you have the dense mobility, dense population, so you have several issues starting from the, let's say, air pollution, and also as well as the traffic difficulties. So these three technologies that I highlighted is not only, let's say, potentially a solution for the rest of it, that requires some concept change. So if we go back to the, what does it mean, a car? I mean, car replaced the horse of the humanity, okay? Why? Because horse or car is required for the mobility. Why we need the mobility? Without mobility, we don't have the civilization. We need to transport the goods and the people in order to make the activities and to feed the people, move the armies, etc. So horse replaced by the combustion engine car. Now we eliminate the horse. Now we are going to replace by electrical car. We make it and also connected. We make it much more smarter. And the next step, we will eliminate the driver. But then the car itself will be a smart device. So finally, we will see a device which is coming from the origin of the horse. So what does it mean? Horses and the humans live together for ages, and that this heritage continue with together with the car. Because when you buy a car, you have a true reason. First reason is liberty of the transportation. Whenever you go, you can go. You don't need to make any reservation, etc. Second is a private space. You can share the your car with your loved one in the same place. And the third reason is very important. When you buy a car, and if you are affordable, if you are able to afford, let's say, a premium or niche brands, you buy the image of the car. When you buy a Porsche, you buy the image of the Porsche or Maserati or Daimler, etc. So with this technological advancement, if we imagine the future car is like a pot made from the plastic, because there's automation everywhere, no one has an accident. So then the third reason will completely disappear. So you don't buy the image of the car. You buy just a pod. And the second, if you are buying a pod for transport, you don't need to own it. So this means it should be rented. It should be available for everybody. Then the first one is the liberty of the transport is a key. So this means we need to create a system and to give the people whenever they whenever they need to transport, it should be available, and then including some private space. So this is not so difficult. This can be done. However, what is the cost of it? So the cost is very high because we are now in the age of, let's say, current social balance. When it's changed, this will create another balance. This will create several thousands of unemployed people, several thousand zombie company. And so what are the mitigation methods? There is no mitigation method. This change is going to be slow, painfully, and it will be region by region. Not every region will shift to this kind of new balance. But those technologies also has some problems. So if we talk about, let's say, autonomous, today we are talking about the 5 level of the autonomous car, or if we summarize, just the 3 level. The first one is a hand-free, second one is a hand-free, eye-free, and then third one is a hand-free, eye-free, and the mind-free. So they are classified in the 5. Today, Tesla and the Waymo is quite advanced on this technology. It's the level is a 2.5. Okay. So they may go 3, but going from 3 to 5, the human excellence will take quite a long time. This is getting difficult in an algorithm way. That requires a huge investment. So is it worth the invest or not? So then I'm coming to the reality of the AI today. So we know that there is let's say, a kind of a big balloon on the AI and all related stock exchange market asset. So why everybody is expecting much more stronger, let's say, result from AI. But what we see with the one slice of the bread, what I'm able to do, a machine needs huge energy and very expensive equipment. So then with the one slice of the bread, I'm able to drive my car with a huge energy, then huge algorithm for AI, then transforming into the model, working in the machine, then put on the car, there is a huge cost. And then this cost was seen quite a long time ago. In my previous company, in 2017, we have the autonomous car is able to drive at the level 2.5. But the equipment was so expensive. So equipment in the best condition, we saw that we can reduce up to, let's say, 10,000-15,000 euro. Now Tesla is proposing $100 per month. Well, this is quite, let's say, incentivized price. So what I'm trying to say, this technology is so expensive, and until getting cheap, it will take quite a long time. And the second question, is it really necessary? So today, once we analyze the AI growth is also slowed down. What we see that AI is creating not very accurate results. So what we see that AI is not killing the job as expected. In the recent research of Daron Acemoğlu, he stated that very rightfully, AI is not going to create a big loss of job because it's far from being a perfect. So you remember the film of the Matrix, human inside of the pod, they are taking their energy because all the energy resources in the consuming the world. So energy is a big problem, and then energy is limited. So are we going to this kind of age? I think this is too much demonic imagination, but this is showing the reality that energy is limited. So in this limited energy, look at the latest acquisition of the Amazon. They pay 650 million euro, a mini nuclear central with data centers. or one NVIDIA chipset, $20,000. Tesla ordered 1 billion, 2 billion euros. So I mean, these are very expensive investment, and then return is not very certain. So that's why in the certain area, AI will be used to autonomize our vehicle, but in a limited geographic zone. If they will find out that one day a much cheaper solution to boost this kind of technology, yes, we can see that. But in the visible future, it is not realistic to have, let's say, an autonomous behavior in every car. And then electric side, again, in the electric, what Europeans forget that, likewise the Chinese, electrical car, production of the electrical car is not an issue. You can maybe produce more expensive, but the problem is you need to create the ecosystem. So Europeans forget to create the ecosystem, which means if we have a magical stick, and if we change the entire vehicle fleet of Europe into the EV, the production of the electricity is not, let's say, is not an issue. You need to just increase 12-13% total production. That's okay. But the problem is, where do you send the vehicle? Where do you send the energy in the distribution network? So that's the big problem. So then energy distribution companies say, so where I should send this level of energy when? So you need to give me this. So then they request a connected car cloud system, and the disconnected car cloud system, they will monitor everybody, that Hakan going from A and B, Nicola going from the C and D, and there is a huge population because of the weekend to do the destination, or there is a vacation period, everybody is rushing to the south, etc. So this means energy distribution companies can balance this energy and then send over there, and vehicle can charge by the charging operator. But even this is not enough. Then you have a question of the, let's say, places are not very crowded during the summertime or vacation period. So then imagine south of France, population multiplied by 5-6 times, and during the vacation period, then in the normal time, who is going to invest in the charging station network? So I mean, again, everybody is talking about the green transition, but nobody wants to pay. In the meantime, electrical cars are affordable because consumers pay less tax. So what happened in Germany when the, let's say, incentive stop, electrical car sales reduced by 30%. So this means public doesn't care about, let's say, the green transition. They just care about the money. So based on this electrification and then this new technology is bringing us to the big cloud system, which means connected car. So connected car is a key milestone of the technology. I think it is more important than the electrification or autonomous car that will give incredible opportunities. But in the current regulation today, I mean, cybersecurity concern is a big concern. So I just let's say, I just made a tweet today about, let's say, one news coming from the Reuters. United States commercial ministry, they decided to propose not to use any Chinese electronic product and software in the American soil. So likewise, probably Chinese will do the same. They have already limited the Tesla access to some government facility in China. So what does it mean? Everybody is afraid of, let's say, being hacked. So when we see the latest attack of Israel to the pager devices, 2 days ago, I was with my mother. My mother say, tell me if my mobile phone can explode. What's happening? So, I mean, this is going to provoke even more and more discussion among the people. So what we see that there is also a limit on the connected car and the big cloud system, which is going to create a, let's say, big division between the two sides of the world. which means China-led coalition and then US-led coalition. So these new technologies, if they are going to be used in the benefit of the humanity, it's perfect. But day by day, what we are discovering is technology means also a big threat for the humanity now. So then how we are going to balance the technology? So these three technologies are very simple technologies. So when I see the news that the pager of the Hezbollah is exploding, I tweeted that Israel has opened the gate of the hell, that this discussion will continue. So then cybersecurity, what we know that it is not 100% possible. So it is always, there's always a risk. You can always a chance that you can being hacked. And then in the meantime, some countries, they are developing quantum computing. They are able to crack down 26 digits of the codes. So what does it mean? If you have let's say an enemy where the quantum computing, this means you don't have any cybersecurity. So then do you need a connected car? Do you need autonomous car to be hacked? Then you will have a big chaos. I know that US is still keeping a very classical, let's say, diesel vehicle in case of any kind of, let's say, a public disorder, and that they are not be hackable because there is no electronic component. So, as I said, Shafak Bey, we are moving to the world with a completely chaotic, and we cannot explain with the previous experiences, and then academic and intellectual of the world, they are not able to digest and to propose good solution for better goods. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Hakan Bey. It's really fascinating to think about how these innovations will not only play a role or change individuals and individual industries, but also the entire economies. So I would like to expand on that a bit. Nicola, what role do you see emerging technologies playing in the strategies of nations trying to secure their economic futures? And how can businesses leverage these disruptions as opportunities rather than threats?
I think, and again, to continue on Hakan Bey's comments, I think it's interesting to see that probably nowhere else but in technology are we witnessing such a violent amount of polarization in the world. Polarization in terms of different norms and standards. I'm running an observatory called Asia Power Watch, and one of my contributors, Gabor Hosch, in one of his articles, coined the term the Galapagos, technological Galapagos. The risk we are seeing is that because of this polarization, and that is basically expressed, Shafak, you know it better than anyone else, through export controls, sanctions, embargoes, we are running the risk of seeing a world running alongside different Galapagos regions, meaning regions that basically operate on their own, completely disconnected from the rest, and developing norms and standards completely disconnected from the rest, where you would have basically no interactions increasingly. So that's one type of polarization. Another type of polarization that I see in tech, and that's reminded to us about what happened in Lebanon with the attack and the remote detonation of pagers held by Hezbollah, is that we're probably going to see in many aspects a polarization between extremely advanced, what Hakan Bey was describing with quantum computing, and on the opposite side, kind of in a barbell type of position, extremely low tech. I believe that we're going to start seeing more and more actors in civil society going on purpose extremely low tech. Obviously, pagers were not low tech enough to prevent Israeli intelligence services from sabotaging them. But I think that's pretty much the idea here. In some aspects, in some sectors, the answer will be to go ever more high tech, and some more other aspects, it will be cheaper and quicker to go extremely low tech. When it comes to how tech is changing the game, again, I would like to caution people against developing the notion that tech changes everything. I would like to take one illustration, and I think we can expand that case to the entire world. The war in Ukraine. If there is one thing that the war in Ukraine, and I think we all agree that the war in Ukraine is being fought to a large extent in a very high-tech fashion. A lot of drones, a lot of cyber attacks, a lot of information warfare, etc. But if there is one thing that this war reminds us, is that as high-tech as actors may be in the 21st century, what matters is still the boots on the ground. How many men can you put in trenches fighting for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? What is your strategic depth? I'm killing you one man. Can you replace that man? And how fast can you replace them? How many waves can you send? A philosopher summed it up very nicely, I think. At one point, quantity becomes a quality. And I think in the 21st century, as much as we're using AI and quantum computing and very advanced technologies and rupture technologies, the numbers, that means the number of people, that means the amount of money that you can put behind, the numbers still matter. And numbers, it's a very old game. That's why I was mentioning 19th century type of philosophy. It's a very 19th century type of philosophy. This is how Napoleon was fighting his wars, sending hundreds of thousands of troops with mercenaries. Numbers matter. And how did Napoleon get stopped in his Russia campaign? Because of winter, he lost way too many men. Numbers became the problem. Not enough numbers at one point, not enough strategic depth. To go back to what's something that Hakan Bey mentioned before also, the United States dollar. The use of the US dollar, and that's connected with technological issues, because as you know, China is developing very fast. The digital yuan, cryptocurrencies are developing very fast. The fact that many actors in the world, and especially in the so-called global south, are starting to implement cryptocurrencies, are starting to diversify away from the US dollar, albeit at a slow pace because it's a difficult endeavor, but they're still doing it. That fact will start to be a problem for the US because they will be lacking the numbers. The numbers will not be there anymore. And as Hakan Bey said very rightly, because the United States equation is current account deficit plus military spending, how are they going to be able to maintain that equation, which is basically the American equation for power? Mm-hmm. So I would like to, I think my message is this. Technology does not erase the need for mass, the need for numbers, the need for quantity. It goes hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Nicola, and thank you, Hakan Bey, actually for sharing such valuable insights today. Your perspectives on the shifting global geo-economic order, the impact of trade wars, and the technological disruption shaping our future have truly deepened our understanding of the challenges and also the opportunities lying ahead. As we have explored throughout this discussion, the world is rapidly changing and the emerging economies are rising. Trade dynamics are shifting and technological advancements are transforming entire industries. And it's clear that to succeed in these new global landscape, businesses and the policymakers alike need to stay informed, adaptable, and forward-thinking. If there is any questions from the audience, we will be happy to answer the questions. So you can drop your questions to the Q&A box. I think there's one question.
Maybe we can take the questions live.
Yeah, we have allowed the mic to Miriam Hanem, and she can unmute the mic and ask the question.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm a French compliance officer, practicing compliance in the financial industry. My question was from an industry and compliance perspective in the Asia region. How do you manage to work with the US, EU, and Chinese regulations in terms of sanctions and embargo and restrictive measures? Could you please enlighten us? Thank you.
Shafak, I think this question is for you.
Yeah, it's always a mess question, and because when you try to manage the Russian sanction, the U.S. sanctions and the EU sanctions, and you need to be careful about the counter sanctions of Russia and China as well. So it's mess. Then I can briefly answer this question that you need to have a direction of doing business in the jurisdictions, and you need to be keen on the critical materials which BIS deems important for the national security concerns of the United States. Any other questions?
I would like maybe to add one thing to what you said, Shafak Bey. I think and this is something that I generally advise clients, then we would need to, of course, look at the specific industry that we're discussing here. But in general, I think it's important that companies start developing a kind of a silo mentality, which can sound a little bit paradoxical in the sense that we usually invite companies to blow up their silos and think very wide. But I think for operational issues, because the legal environments, for example, what you mentioned here, China, the US, and Europe, because the legal environments are becoming increasingly mutually exclusive, meaning if you're respecting the law in one jurisdiction, you're probably violating it in another one. And that's obviously done on purpose to make every country and every company pick their side. Because it's becoming increasingly mutually exclusive, I think it's important that companies start operating under silos. And by this, I mean geographic silos. That has an impact, for example, on your entire supply chains. To service the Chinese market, we're going to have to try and get as close as possible to a purely China dedicated supply chain. To service the European market, we're going to have to get as close as possible to a purely dedicated European supply chain. I think this is the best way to do it. It's very costly, of course. It's time consuming, but then companies have to ask themselves the question, is it cheaper not to do it? You know, it's like in a casino. Do you have a better chance of winning if you go all in every time, or do you have a better chance of winning if you average out your bets? And my argument is that companies should be averaging out their bets.
Yeah, I can add some experience. In all my career, I have seen 3 times big sanction led by the United States. The first one is the Second Gulf War towards Iraq, and the second one is Iran, and then third one is Russia. So what is the, let's say, difference? It's getting tighter, and then much more fragmented, and then impossible to digest. And what we have seen in the first one, and during the war, that the American company continue to sell through Dubai to Iraq, while we are not able to sell. That's the first reality. And the second one is Iran. My company has a big operation over there. We were producing more than 200,000 cars. And in one day, we were instructed. We said we are a French company, but major stake in the Nissan, operating in Asia, operating in US. Boom, we are gone. Same thing happened in the Ukraine war. It's not a war of France, but we retreat from the country that we produce more than 1 million cars. So what does it mean? That European countries are not are following the, let's say, US sanction, and then these sanction mercilessly applying, and then the companies are paying very big consequences at the end. So this is working so far from US perspective point of view. I remember last year when United States applied some embargo to China about critical mineral, critical element for the battery technology. And then I commented on the Twitter that, so what if China is response will be much more difficult for the West, because China is keeping the control, 90% control of the battery supply chain. So now it's happening now. So China is not allowing to send, let's say, critical technologies outside of China. So China is applying. So I think the age that the United States is applying mercilessly to the embargo is finishing, because this rivalry, as mentioned by the Nicola at the beginning, that the China is not a poor guy like the Soviet Union. So there is a consequence.
Yeah, you need to identify the market you will sell, the market you will supply, and you need to be care about the secondary sanction risk of these legislations, actually. So for all of us here today, this conversation is not the end, it's just the beginning, and the insights we have gained provide a roadmap for navigating the uncertainties ahead, but it's our actions that will ultimately determine how we thrive in this evolving geo-economic environment. Once again, thank you, Nicola and Hakan Bey, for your time, expertise,
thank you for having us,
and the powerful insights you have shared. And thank you to our audience for being a part of this important conversation. We look forward to staying connected and continuing this dialogue as we navigate these changing times together. Stay well, and we hope to see you at our next event. Thank you very much.
teşekkür ederim. Thank you.
Bye bye.